Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 157 of Mythos Busters. If I sound a little bit... Did I do it right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If I sound a little bit different, it's because I looked into Scott's eyes right now and saw trepidation.
It was amazement.
We were coming to you from the past. We're recording the day before BusterCon in Justin's wonderful game space. So we've got Scott and
Hi.
Ian.
Hello.
And Justin here.
Hey, everybody.
And we're just so excited. How often do we get to do this? Like biannually?
Like on average once a year?
Yeah.
Like how... Yeah.
I feel like we've even skipped it because we've done Iron Man, and that kind of counts, but
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time we were all in a room recording like this.
Yeah, I think we've only done this like 3 or 4 times, right?
Either way, it's exciting.
Yes,
I'm
that's fantastic.
very, very excited about it. So we've got a great episode for you guys today. I was going to say tonight because we always record tonight, but I don't know, I'm just off rhythm. It's fine. We're gonna finally actually finish up the review of the Scarlet Keys campaign. No, not campaign. Investigator expansion, and finish out the neutrals and the weaknesses. And then, we figured because we have Ian here in the flesh, we'd talk a little bit about Fortune and Folly, because it's the new hotness, as it were. So, first things first. So excited to be here. BusterCon is, see, this is weird podcasting time now. Like, we will have released the post-BusterCon episode by the time anyone's listening to this. So, it was great! It was fantastic! Nothing went wrong!
Nope. Just epic memories.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we're just very excited for whatever the next time is. But, yeah, so I guess I don't know, I'm feeling very thankful to the patrons at this particular moment. Yes. So I know it might be out of sync for where we're at when everyone's listening right now, but I feel a need to call out that we get to do this because of our patrons and people who listen and support the podcast. So in addition to everyone who actually hucked their carcass over to Minnesota to actually go to BusterCon, we want to thank everyone who supports the podcast. It's just so very cool to have the support of a community that lets us do these very cool things for this amazing game. So
yeah, huge shout out.
Yeah. I always say it lets us dream big, and our dreams just keep on getting bigger and bigger. So I'm glad that people continue supporting because
until Justin comes around with the needle.
yeah.
Everyone needs a strength, and that's mine.
Exactly right.
I feel like sometimes we are the little kid in the mall on the tether. You know, like the little backpack tether leash, and Justin is like, hey,
don't touch that.
Yeah. No, Justin, just you keep us grounded because sometimes we need a little yank.
Sometimes we don't do that.
Yeah, well, who's really good at grounding themselves besides Justin?
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's a skill. It's a skill like anything else.
You think I'm grounded? You you saw how I collect games and other things.
Yeah, wow.
I just channel it differently.
Yeah. Yep. I've ventured into the mausoleum. It is it's the catacombs, if you will.
It's the law of conservation of mental energy, right?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Well, I suppose let's just hop right into to our card reviews here. I believe we start out with Justin's card.
Yes. So I have the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, a.k.a. the Control Gun.
Straight up.
It is a theoretical device, 4 cost, 1 wild icon. It is traded as an item, relic, weapon, and firearm, and it's customizable. It has uses, 4 ether. If Hyperphysical Shotcaster has no ether, discard it. Action: spend 1 ether, resolve the manifest ability of the Hyperphysical Shotcaster's current form. Zappy Boy, exhaust Hyperphysical Shotcaster. Change its form to one you have unlocked on its upgrade sheet. Okay. And now I shall read the essay on the Hyperphysical Shotcaster. The customizable card for it. 2 tick marks. Rail Shooter. Hyperphysical Shotcaster has this form. Manifest. Fight. Fight with any skill. This attack deals +1 damage. For 2 tick marks, Telescanner. Hyperphysical Shotcaster has this form. Manifest. Investigate. Investigate with any skill. If you succeed, discover a clue at any revealed location instead of your location. 2 more tick boxes. Translocator. Hyperphysical Shotcaster has this form. Manifest. Evade. Attempt to evade with any skill. Before or after this attempt, you may move an investigator or a non-elite enemy at your location to a connecting location, or vice versa. 2 tick marks. Reality Collapser. All one word. Hyperphysical Shotcaster has this form. Manifest. Test any skill. 3. If you succeed, discard from play a non-weakness treachery that is not attached to an elite enemy. 2 more tick boxes. Matter Weaver. Hyperphysical Shotcaster has this form. Manifest. Choose an asset in your hand and test any skill X, where X is that asset's cost. If you succeed, play that asset at no cost. 4 tick boxes. Etheric Link. Hyperphysical Shotcaster enters play with 2 additional ether. And the last one for 4 more tick boxes. Empowered Configuration. While using a manifest ability, you get +2 skill value.
So I'm going to say something controversial, but at level 0, absolute garbage.
Unplayed.
Hey!
Why don't you like Control the video game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So I know we talked last episode on Survivor cards that like the multi-tool was a Survivor card, but like this is the real multi-tool, right?
Yeah.
It does so many things.
It does, but yeah. I think personally, the way I have used it is I usually pick 1, maybe 2 forms, and then I'm using the link so it gets more ether to start with.
Yeah, because you need that.
And if I'm just doing one of the things, like I'm using it as a weapon, honestly, it's usually the evade one, because the evade one's fantastic. I use the empowered configuration to get the +2. Okay. But I usually try and go for 2 powers, I guess.
Sure. But, I mean, the nice thing is anyone could take this and find something to do with it.
Yes.
Wherever you end up spending the XP. Obviously, we kind of buried the lead here. The important part to talk about is since its uses are aether.
Yeah.
There's like no way to replenish it, right? Am I correct in that?
Not that I can think of.
Just like everything that does.
Not that I found.
Yeah, everything that replenishes uses, like it's ammo, it's supplies, it's charges, it's secrets.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? Like that's going to keep it balanced because this can do a lot of different things.
Does contraband, does it double the number of uses or is it double ammo?
I think it's ammo and supply, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So
Because
I think it
like
does
no
call
one's
out
using it in
specifically.
Safina to do charges or anything, right? Because those are uses too.
Yeah.
Or maybe we just unlocked a new Wombo combo, and you're welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
This is a card I haven't used a lot, or at all, really. And I think it's because every time I'm going to use it, I have a more specific card I want to use instead. But the one that really sticks out to me, I don't know if you'll have tried this one, is the Reality Collapser.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't think of any other card that's just like... Because there are like events and stuff that let you discard a treachery, but this is just repeatable, well, as long as you have the uses for it.
Mm-hmm.
But to just keep discarding treacheries, that seems pretty great. Especially for a 4-player game.
I have really come around to that being an amazing ability. And Edge of the Earth was what did it to me. It's either Ellsworth or Claypool has the ability to blank a treachery for a turn. And obviously in that campaign it's particularly important. But, you know, I built a whole deck around Alter Fate. Like, it's amazing how much work you can get out of that particular thing.
I found it really good with that ability in both TCU, because there's just
There's so many.
a million things that attach to a million things. Isn't that where Alter Fate came out?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
was
Like,
where my Alter Fate deck was for,
yeah.
too.
And also in Dream Eaters. Especially the... Oh, God, what's the island hopping one?
Kadath.
Kadath. Search for Kadath. Visit those... the Maga birds, and then the hunting corsairs or whatever, the ones that those two that connect and whatever. Oh, and the one that connects to the location, and instead of successfully getting a clue, you put a doom on the agenda or something.
Dreamlands,
Wondrous
Lands or something like that.
Yeah. Anyways,
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it does take a lot of XP to get to, I think, a usable point. I mean, it's minimum 2 XP for it to do anything.
Yeah. And I think that it's notable in that regard, because we can talk about how playable or unplayable these customizable cards are at level 0, but it literally does nothing until you put some XP into it. So
but
that's interesting.
It also feels like a 10 XP card. It's one of those cards you're like, this. If this was a neutral that had some of these abilities, and it was a leveled up card, it would probably be a level 5 card.
Yeah, yeah.
Like with a certain combination of these things, like it's pretty bonkers.
I'm looking at, okay, so the fight one's like super simple. So rail shooter, this is just the 45.
45, yeah.
Telescanner, investigate with any skill. If you succeed, discover a clue at any revealed location instead of yours. So like you can't get a clue from yours.
Yep.
Which is interesting. So like where rail shooter might be, someone's got a weird stat, they can't access guns, there's no good weapon option, hey, this looks good for damage. You're not taking Telescanner for an analogous reason.
No. And not to mention it, that's one clue at a time.
Yeah.
Like there's no compression there.
Yeah.
And one thing too about the railgun too, you don't get a bonus to your fight.
True.
It's just a +1 damage.
Well, I mean, I've been playing Mystic since the core set, so I'm used to that.
Yeah, well, yeah. 2 fight, let's go!
Translocator, I think is a good call out. That one, like evade and get away from me. That's super solid.
Yeah, reminds me of Genet. The amount of manipulation there.
The Matter Weaver. That's an interesting one. We've had some abilities like this. I know Scott, you're a big fan of Unearth the Ancient. Taking up a hand slot because that's essentially economy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your economy card. That's an interesting pull because you're playing down a 4-cost economy card.
That's where it lost me when I was like, wow, that seems pretty good, and it's had to pay 4 plus 2 experience to get there.
You just pay for the thing you want to pay for, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're testing for assets that cost 4 or 5, and you've got the empowered configuration, so you have the +2 skill, and maybe you have a 5 skills, you're at 7.
And maybe you've got a rider ability on a skill that you would like to be able to just proc.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
It's not so bad.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you're trying to put out and what kind of deck you're trying to build. Like if this is your economy card, God, when's the last time you took emergency cash upgraded any level?
I've got it in one of my standalones.
Yeah.
Yeah, special cases. It's
Chainsaw.
in my Iron Man plans, but
yeah, that's one that I always
very
put in the
specific.
upgrades because, like, all right, well, if I get to the end of the campaign, like maybe I'll need it.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting card. Interesting card. Lots of uses. Well, I mean, lots of utility.
It has 4
very
uses.
very
actually.
few uses.
But it's the kind of card where it's like you're taking it for the versatility, because if you are just like a fighter, then you just spend that XP on an actual like super strong weapon, similar with the Investigate. This is if you're trying to like be the ultimate flex, really.
Yeah. But you're either locked into taking in the thick of it, or you are not using this on scenario 1, which is an interesting conundrum.
I dabbled with this in Rita solo as my clue getting machine.
Okay.
And so I put in the clue thing, which was really weird, but not so bad with Rita
Because she scoots around.
Because she scoots around, right? And so like you can leave a clue here and there because you're just gonna go elsewhere and get that clue later. And then I also add the +2 to it, so I'm investigating at 7.
not
Which
bad.
for Rita is
Well, and Rita's likely to have an agility boost somewhere else too, so
like most of the time I don't even need it.
yeah.
But like combine that, so that would be 6 XP, so essentially a 3 XP card, and 2 copies, 4 uses in solo. That's 8 clues. That's a decent amount of clues.
That's probably the
2
majority
cards.
of the clues you need for a scenario.
Yeah. So I
In a
know
lot of
solo I
cases.
usually go for 8 clue getting cards. In solo is usually my minimum.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I mean, in general, it's kind of interesting solo applications to the point of the versatility because, like, what do you need to be in solo? You need to be versatile and cover a lot of bases. Like, I'm thinking of solo seekers. Obviously, you're not going to take the investigate one more than likely, but you have the fight and evade one with your bonkers intellect, and you can just do everything at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Does take up a hand slot, but
Yeah.
might be worth it.
Seekers have so many ways of getting to nauseatingly high levels of intellect nowadays.
Yeah,
I don't, like,
yeah.
if this takes the place of one magnifying glass
Right,
for
right,
4
yeah.
turns, well, that's yeah. And you upgrade your magnifying glasses, so you bounce them back to hand, put your shotcaster in. When your shotcaster's spent, you still have your magnifying glass to put out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rob is your father's brother.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard we wanted more slots. That brings us to Tool Belt. The neutral asset, of course, 2 cost, level 0, 1 will icon, item and clothing. Yes, Tool Belt counts as clothing. Each attached asset takes up no slots, and its text box is treated as if it were blank, except for traits. Zappy Boy, free trigger, exhaust Tool Belt, choose one, attach a tool asset in your play area to Tool Belt, switch a tool asset in your play area with an attached asset, or detach an attached asset. And it takes up the body slot.
So it's probably worth noting what are some notable tools.
Magnifying glass, multi-tool. Goodness, what else? Fingerprint kit.
I think most of the survivor things are
Yeah.
tools. Like
Mhm.
tool is a heavy survivor trait.
Yeah,
It's-
fire axe.
Seeker has quite a few.
I know I've used this in. Oh, is it Joe, who's the half seeker, half
Mm-hmm.
with the hunch deck?
Mm-hmm.
So he has. So I've used it to have one hand on a gun and one hand as my clue getting tool, and it just, or whatever other tools I want, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of like his offhand, but his offhand is like 3 cards, depending on what I need at that point.
Are there any tools that take up a slot other than a hand slot? Like, is there like a singlet slot that are there any accessory tools? Is really what I'm asking.
Is Garrote wire a tool? Probably not.
Interesting.
In my heart, it's a tool, but I don't think it actually counts as one. I think
Yeah, I
they
mean-
might all be hand slots, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, those are the important ones anyway. I was just kind of curious. I don't think it's bad. I think it's not every build at all, because a lot of builds you can get down to a slot array that just works, and you can shuffle in and out. But this is a neutral option to. It's almost like Bandolier, right? If you've got a tool that's a 2-hand slotter, then suddenly you can have at least one other thing rocking with it, and you don't have to worry about it kicking it out, and you can just switch it back and forth as needed.
Sledgehammer is a tool.
Sledgehammer, I'm sure chainsaw is a tool.
Yep.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, so switching those, like if you're the killer,
Yeah.
I just, now I'm imagining someone walking around with a tool belt with a sledgehammer and a chainsaw attached to it. And just,
Even
Isn't that Ash
Vincent's
from Evil Dead?
yeah,
basically.
even Vincent's bone saw is a tool, and
Yeah.
sometimes I run into hand slot issues with Vincent.
yeah. I have found, though, I think this offers some unique opportunities. The times I've used it, though, and maybe this is just because I've played for many years without it, is I go back to kind of what you were saying, where I pick the slots in my deck and the things that are going in those slots very specifically, that it's something like the magnifying glass and the shotcaster, right? Where I'm just going to interchange them as needed, and once things done, I'm chucking it out. I'm not worried about constantly switching between an array of 3 things. Even with that Joe deck, I was like, this is like a long walk to something that could have taken very few steps. And the thing is, too, and I realize this is a criticism of some cards and feels kind of generic, but I mean, at its heart, Tool Belt does nothing on its own. Right? Like, it is a card that requires other cards to work.
It's solving the specific problem of I don't have enough slots for the things I want.
Yeah. I'm indecisive. No.
Well, I mean, I didn't say it.
No, I think there are builds for it, but it's
not a general purpose card, I don't think, because it's easy enough to get down to a mix of your kit that you can just work with the slots you have. So like the one I keep going back to is just like if you've got a two-hander and you have something else you want to use, neutral option is pretty okay.
All right. Moving on to Refine, a neutral 3-cost event, willpower and agility icon, traded supply double. An additional cost to play Refine, spend an action. Immediately mark a checkbox on an upgrade sheet for a customizable card you own, even if it is not in play. Max 1 per game for each investigator. So 3 cost, 2 actions for essentially an XP?
Yeah. I've drawn lots of encounter cards for that shit before.
Yeah?
that is true.
I have been known.
That being said, it's only XP for upgradable cards, but I mean...
And it's only for the person playing it,
Yeah,
as opposed
that's
to
true.
Delve.
Yeah. It's not a... Yeah.
Which, I think we learned from Delve, and that's probably okay.
Yeah. I've been tempted to put this in, but honestly, like... I guess same thing as Tool Belt. This card does nothing on its own.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
it is...
the hard part.
Yeah.
I think this has a place in multiplayer when you don't have as much pressure to be constantly performing, and you might have the space to be like, okay, this turn I kind of don't need to do anything.
Yep.
This is my refined turn, and like just early in the campaign, because like this is the sort of card where I'm just trying to get my customizable card rolling to the point where I've got the things that I want, and then that's getting swapped out for something else, like scenario 3 or 4 probably, ideally.
Like the customizable cards are super XP hungry, as we've talked about, which I think is why this card exists. So I do see it for that reason. It does let you get that XP right away, which is interesting. Like, so scenario 1, like you can tick the box and have something up and going.
That's true.
It's just 1 though, but it's still
Is
something.
it max 1 per game? Could you
For
run
each investigator.
each investigator? Okay,
Yeah. So you get 1 at most, but it's something for some of the customizable.
I mean, if you play in the thick of it and you want Shotcaster in your deck, this could get you to 2 options in the first game.
That's true.
Good point.
It's options are there. I find there's one deck that I've kind of been toying with, which is just it's stupid in its premise, but it's a Safina deck. So I know you're interested already.
I am
running Drawn to the Flame. No, not Drawn to the Flame. The experience one.
The experience one.
Delve Too Deep.
Delve Too Deep. Thank you.
So sorry, I failed you.
Let God sort them out. Refine.
Oh my gosh.
Down the Rabbit Hole, and Arcane Research.
Okay.
And so it's just like I get up to 20 XP in like 1.5 scenarios, and it's just going for
battle cruiser mode immediately.
Nice.
yeah, just
I like that.
absolute wrecking house Safina, and I have it based mostly around combat and spells and stuff like that. But
I do like its supply trait.
yes,
Because that makes it
backpack.
it makes it a backpackable. It also makes it stick to the planable.
Stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and it's honestly not a bad one to stick to the plan, because that's the sort of thing where like there might only be like one window in the game you're playing where you could actually play it, and having it on stick to the plan is clutch for those kind of cards.
Because that's honestly another reason that makes me pause is like these kind of cards where there's only certain time. Like you kind of want it maybe at the beginning, when usually you're setting up anyway, or at a point where you have some time, but you're going to draw this when you can't use it, like half the time at
Or
least.
not draw it when you can.
Yes,
use it.
yeah,
exactly. So, like, Safina is actually a good call because she gets a big opening hand, so you're likely to see it more often, or those other cards, like Stick to the Plan. Or
Terrible
Backpack.
option to put in Safina's little 5-card thing, though.
Yes.
I will Painted World that
Pro
shit.
tip.
Yeah. Hey guys, pro tip. Delve Too Deep. Excellent Painted World target.
Interesting. I do appreciate that it's got defensive icons. It's got a willpower and an agility. With a conditional card like that, like we were talking about, where you, like the window is tough to find sometimes. You want those icons.
I feel like thematically, I'd rather have a single wild icon. just because
Sure.
it does anything to any customizable card. You know, like I'm not gonna. These are just my least two favorite stat. My two least favorite stats.
That's fair. That's
I agree on one of them.
What?
dividing the house here.
Yeah, how many uses out of this in a campaign would you feel like, okay, I'm glad I included it? Like, how many tick boxes worth?
If it didn't tank a scenario for me because I was trying to use it at the wrong time,
Yeah.
or assuming it was successful, I'd feel good if I got like 3 or 4 out of it.
I think if you get 5, like that's like, you just got a quote unquote free 5 XP card.
Yeah.
Like that's because the XP that you don't have to spend on your a customizable card, you're now spending that on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Or you're getting power word to level 10 like right away.
yeah, exactly.
Say more about that.
Please don't taboo power word.
Let's just talk about Power Word again.
By the time this episode's released, it might already
No,
be
no,
taboo.
No, don't
no.
put that into the world.
I'm sorry, past me. Or future me. I don't know how time works. All right. So speaking of past us, we've got Flashlight, level 3. This is neutral asset 2 cost. It has an intellect and an agility icon. It is item and tool traded. Uses 4 supplies. Reaction. When you perform a skill test while investigating or attempting to evade, spend 1 supply. This test gets -2 difficulty. Takes up a hand slot. And this card was designed by the Council in Exile at Arkham Nights 2020 when we were all in quarantine. They did a live stream. I'm sure that's still out there if you're interested.
I think you can still get the print and play cards on the website.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was this one and level 2 Guard Dog, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty big fan of this. Is the glow up in
Yeah.
my opinion in a lot of different ways. You get the extra icon, you get the extra supply, and you get that reaction, which is so clutch.
Yes.
The fact that it is not its own action, and this can be a rider on something else that you're doing. This could be a rite of seeking, and suddenly you're going down on it, and then you get to go to invade too.
Flash them in the eyes.
So it's just like it's like I don't know. 3 XP seems perfectly fair for that.
Yep.
I have taken this card a fair few times since it came out.
Amazing in Daryl,
Yes,
right? Like just
Daryl or anyone else using that suite of get to 0
yeah.
cards. But yeah, like neutral. Like again, this packs so much into one card. So this is not too dissimilar from like your hyperphysical shotcaster, except this has supplies so you can more easily replenish it. But you get a lot of options out of this one little card. And for, I suppose we're comparing it, it would be 6 XP.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the shotcaster's probably like right in there with if you spent 6 XP on it.
I put into my solo Rita deck right next to my shotcaster, right? Like it's investigating, right, to lower that shroud, and then also useful for the evade option if I come across an enemy with like a huge evade or something like that, or even something like a Night Gaunt, right? Like dropping their evade to 0. So
Suddenly their ability.
So you can't fail now, right? Well.
Careful.
Not before Buster comes.
Famous last
By the
words.
time this is released, we will have failed many times.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. So many bell rings.
Oh, people will know about
Yeah,
that.
I know. Scott was like, don't spoil it. I'm like, no, it's not spoiled now.
It's not spoiled.
Time.
It's the past, future, present,
Yeah.
past.
Will have not said anything about...
Suddenly I have a nosebleed for no reason.
Ian just went butterfly effect on us. Yeah, and to tool belt we were talking about earlier, if you're rocking a 2-handed tool, and like this is possibly something to put in that hand slot that would make me look at tool belt to keep both things in play. So good job, Council in Exile. You did a good job.
Yeah.
And like what a good glow up for a classic, right? Like you don't want upgraded flashlight to be a flash in the pan. No, that was.
No, that was good.
You know what? I'll allow it.
I regret it.
I'll allow it.
Thank you for humoring me.
It's also great for recursion, like scavenging builds. I mean,
cheap.
Yorick can recur it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like if you have that kind of recursion, you're pretty much set for the game as far as investigating. Like, what else do you need, really?
Yeah. And if I could pack like 4 copies of that in a deck, what else do you need?
Just 30 flashlights.
Hey, man, 30 good cards.
All right. Next one is Soul Sanctification. Level 3 neutral asset. It's permanent. It's exceptional. For every point of damage and or horror, you heal an excess of an investigator's current damage horror. Place 1 resource on Soul Sanctification as an offering. This still counts as healing. Good to know. Free triggers, happy boy. Spend 1 offering. You get +2 skill value for this test. Limit twice per test.
I can think of 2 investigators. This is great.
Tell us more.
Rita and Mark. No.
No, I mean Mark's not like the worst call out.
No.
If you want to like float at like only ever proc his ability and then heal back. But then again, never mind. I'd like then you just proc his ability, you get the +2, and it's a complete wash.
Yeah,
I appreciate why you used Mark now. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just distracted by the art on this card. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Mm-hmm. It looks like a Jizo's statue from Sekiro.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there.
So I've found with playing Carolyn and what's his name? Vincent. I played more Carolyn than Vincent, but I find that sometimes when you play that role in 4-player and you're like, hey, I'm gonna heal a bunch with Carolyn. I'm gonna get some clues, but I'm also just gonna heal the hell out of your horror. So like, feel free to take your horror. Sometimes I'm stuck in a turn where I have a bunch of healing options and everyone is fully healed.
Yeah.
So now I have a way to like trickle charge into this, because I'm pretty sure the way I read it is, like anything you heal in excess of. Although now I have a question: is that changing the game state enough to be a legal option? Can I heal someone who's fully healed in order to get icons on there?
Well, let's ask our rule guy, Scott.
Well.
In
anyways,
excess.
Yeah, but what it also does though is like with Carolyn, sometimes you have like I have an effect, or Vincent's like that heal 3 or 4 damage or something for dropping a clue.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes someone just has 1 damage on them, and you've got nothing else to do. The clues are gone, whatever. Like it allows you to use those big heals on small amounts of damage or horror in order to get a benefit later. Like it doesn't feel wasted.
Yeah, because that's the hurdle, right? Is those cards? Oh, hey, sure, I can help you out, but
Am I overspending?
Yeah.
6 XP though.
6 XP.
But
yeah.
permanent. Like I'm kind of okay with exceptional cards like that. Like
Yeah.
where they start out, because that's a deck plan, right? If I had to draw this,
I have not used this yet. And I'd be surprised if a lot of people have so far, because it is so specific. But yeah, with like Vincent and Carolyn, I feel like this is a card I need to do that testing thing where you just pretend you have it, the tokens on it, and see how many I end up by the end of the game.
Yeah.
Just to see if it would be worthwhile. Or use it in a standalone, of course, which is the best testing zone for these kind of cards.
I like how you've talked yourself into a testing zone where you're actually playing by the rules. Because the fact that you were just doing a hypothetical token thing hurts you inside.
My eye twitched a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like watching that happen in person, like you can usually feel it over the airwaves, but you can see it today.
I had to talk myself I don't love this card, but yeah, I mean, it's just very specific. It's for the 2 healing investigators, and I do like Vincent a lot. Carolyn's okay.
I think though, here's the thing I think about Carolyn and Vincent is I haven't, like Vincent I've only played like a handful of times, and so I need to explore more because I'm really interested in it. But also with Carolyn, like I haven't played her a whole lot since before In the Thick of It came out, and then also add in Arcane Research.
That's true.
And like now is
it's a different world.
Like what
now.
if you're the other 3 players
Just go ham.
go absolute ham on the trauma to get bonuses like that, and then as a Carolyn player, you're just like from turn 1,
You got a job.
I have a job, and like I have a side job of maybe getting clues. But it's almost like the idea of Carson, where I am a player who's helping the rest of you be way more effective because you have all this XP to start. You're getting way more XP for scenarios. Your cards are better. And so I'm just like lightly helping out. And this is just a side bonus that when I'm done helping, I probably have some tokens left over. I can pass treacheries. I can evade something so I don't need one of you to come get me. Stuff like that, right? Where instead of Carolyn, everyone having 3 actions, Carolyn is essentially philosophically donating her actions to each, like Carson does. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where it's 3 investigators playing a 4-player game, but they each have 4 actions philosophically because of better cards and whatever.
Well, we've talked a long time about like the state of healing versus soak in the meta, or at least what we understand the meta to be. So I love the idea of adding a little bonus to going healing, because most of the time people are like, oh, I'll put in soak. Why do I need healing? Do it after the fact, waste actions, whatever. So you're getting a little bonus on it. Anyone know why this needed exceptional? It seems like 6 XP for that is a lot, because it's just a stat boost. It's not like you're getting extra damage or extra clues out of it.
I think because it starts in play, like that is such a huge bonus.
Yeah, sure.
And I think you could, especially with the cards that Vincent has that came in the most recent set, I think you can run that excess up pretty high.
Sure.
Yeah.
With
So
syntax.
So I think if you had it out at a lower cost, it would change the curve.
Sure.
Just for how good it would be.
Here's my question. Would you rather 2 copies at 3 XP in your deck, or 1 copy at 6 XP in play?
Oh, that is a really good question.
Because I 100% know I want it in play from game
For
1.
this type of card, where it's like you need to
that's
keep
fair.
triggering.
I agree.
The interesting thing for Vincent is like his ability kind of does this already in a way with On the Mend. Like it's giving you those skill boosts. And you can pass it around, because I would like this a lot more if I could give this +2 skill value to others.
Yeah,
but
like
it's just
lean
for
harder
me.
into support.
Because then you could be really hard on support.
But with Vincent, you're already giving the +2, and
So
you're
this is
getting a
for
+2.
you.
Yeah.
This is my piece.
Yeah. This is my pound of flesh. Yeah. It's your flesh, but now it's mine.
We share flesh.
I quote,
Oh, this got spicy.
I quote unquote healed you.
Let's continue this little fan fiction.
Everyone please note, Ian is standing between the rest of us and the door.
He is the closest to the exit.
Dear God, Ian, put down the knife. Where did you get the surgical mask from? The lights have now gone off.
Where did you get tassels?
Your name tag says, "Hello, my name is Vincent."
But yeah, I have yet to take it. But the idea of it intrigues me. Is that about where everyone else is at too?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
I think I do want to try it in a Carolyn, a 4-player game where I'm Carolyn and everyone else has taken a bunch of the trauma like I talked about, and it's just like, hey, I'm gonna heal the absolute bejesus out of you.
Just play TFA.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So, and that's one thing too, like the soak versus healing with all this trauma bonus stuff. You can't soak trauma.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
I mean, you could just play soak so you don't take it on yourself. But you know what I mean. It's still...
It's a good life lesson, too.
Yeah.
You can't soak trauma.
Mental health.
Yeah.
We brought it back.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that's the player card clutch, right?
Mm-hmm. What a box.
What a box. Yeah, I know. So let's then move on to some weaknesses.
Guardian?
Guardian first, as always. So we've got Lurker in the Dark, which is a basic weakness enemy. Monster at Shoggoth traded. It has 3 fight, 2 health, 1 evade, Guardian Investigator only. It has Hunter. Spawn any connecting location. Lurker in the Dark can only be attacked or damaged using weapon assets or tactic events, and takes 1 fewer damage from each source. To no minimum, by the way. It can reduce it to 0.
Oh.
And it often does. Okay, so I have played TFA with my friend Kip. And he was playing Mark and drew this. And Mark draws a lot of cards, so it saw the board a lot. It's a pain. Like, you just look at the numbers on this card, it doesn't look too bad, but like that need to soak up your weapon uses or your tactic events that you'd otherwise be using on like what the encounter deck is throwing at you. Like, it is not nothing. And the fact that this pops into play at a connecting location means that you also don't get to immediately address it. It now adds like 2 extra like things to think about to the board. It's a pain in the ass. It is not a nothing weakness at all.
If you're playing a sniper build, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay? 3 damage.
True. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, Winchester
And you have
would
the
take this
connecting location,
sucker out in one go, right?
I think
Or not Winchester.
Springfield.
Springfield, yes.
I think it definitely needs to be looked at as if it has like 3.5 health, not 2.
I think it's closer to 4.
Yeah, like I mean, it's 3 health if you can do it in one shot, or
Yeah.
it's 4 health, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's 3.666.
You're right.
Okay.
It just doesn't feel good to have to waste your vicious blow on this,
100%.
Yeah.
But also, I mean,
But you can.
it's like a 45 and a vicious blow, and you've dealt with it. One location away though. That's another big thing too.
45 and a Vicious Blow is the name of my alt-rock grunge band's first EP in high school.
There it is.
All right, we got there. Yep.
This is one that feels like it becomes less troublesome as you level up and get more XP later in the campaign, and you're dealing more damage with each go. But yeah, I mean, in general, I hate enemy weaknesses because they always show up when I have other enemies that I was just about to deal with. And this would be particularly a pain in that regard. But
Now, the Guardian Investigator only is only referring to the deck building rules, it's not like Prey. You know how some of them will have
correct.
Prey
Yeah.
only, so other investigators can help you with this,
Yes.
yeah.
provided they have the means, which
Yeah.
is nice.
And at least you can damage it, unlike, what is that one? Your Worst Nightmare?
Yeah.
Yeah. That one is annoying as a
That one's
Guardian.
real
Yeah.
annoying.
I do like that. I mean, spawn any connecting location. Sometimes you can play really funny jokes, and it just doesn't become an issue.
Just put it right on top of someone and be like,
Or I mean, just like in a location that's gonna like leave at the end of the
oh, sure,
turn,
sure.
right? Like, oh, I drew this, but we're gonna advance, and that location's going away.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, like the fact that it doesn't spawn where you are gives you some.
A little bit, yeah.
It gives you some things to think.
It also
about.
gives you time to get a weapon
True.
that you need, anyways.
Yes.
So.
Pop it in a trap that's next door.
Yeah.
The other nice thing is it's not elite. So any of your nonsense that's gonna like throw this on the bottom of a deck or anything like that, could you dumb luck this? Because that's technically, it says put it on the bottom of the encounter deck.
You could not, because it's a player card. So once it enters an out of play area, it has to go back to the deck where it belongs. One of the out of play areas where it belongs.
So you'd go to put it on under the encounter deck, and it would go to your discard pile. Judge.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well,
I don't know.
we
Yeah.
don't need to belabor that, but yeah. Your shenanigans that work on enemies will
Could
work
waylay
on
it.
this. Yeah, you
Because
can
it's
waylay
discard
it.
from play.
And it's a great waylay target.
Yeah.
One evade.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's let's basic weakness difficulty 1 to 10. What are you thinking? I'm clocking this like 6, 7.
I wouldn't put that high. I don't think.
You think so?
Personally, I was gonna say like compared to some other weaknesses that can hit a guardian,
Sure. Yeah, the fact that it is specifically guardian.
4.
Yeah, I was thinking around 4 to 5. Maybe
I'm
somewhere
sticking-
around
I was
there.
going to put it at 6 to 7, but that's just because extra requirements scare me.
Yeah.
But I mean, like if a seeker got this,
Yeah.
11. I don't have weapons or tactics.
See, that's probably why I was so thrown by
Yeah,
it.
there you go. Well, speaking of secret weaknesses,
Ooh, let's do that.
Yeah.
Quantum Paradox. Basic weakness, Paradox traded. Seeker Investigator only. As an additional cost to play Quantum Paradox, you must choose and discard 4 other cards from your hand. Forced. If Quantum Paradox is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and take 1 horror.
So it's a little bit paranoia. It's a little bit dark memory.
yeah,
A little bit country. A little bit
amnesia,
rock and roll.
not paranoia.
Yes, thank you. Amnesia.
Yeah.
I do like I think this is maybe the most brutal out of these 5 because
Because you're losing the card draw and drawing it.
Yeah,
Like
it's competing with the survivor one is one thing, but
yeah.
you lose a card draw on drawing it, and then you lose 4 more cards. But
If
I mean,
anyone can recover.
if anyone can recover, Also, Seekers usually have more sanity than health, including all the allies are always 1/2s, a lot of them. And you know what? If you have to hold off for a turn or two, taking 2 horror before you can, like, whatever, like if you really have something pressing you need to deal with,
If
you can tank a horror or 2 for whatever. And then Carolyn can come along and heal it, and you can use the soul sanctification.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, is it true that if this hits you at a time when, like, you have a small hand, you straight up, like, if you were to discard your whole hand, it still wouldn't satisfy the requirements unless it is at least 4.
Is it
it's
a
an
cost?
additional cost.
It's you have to pay the full cost.
So
Yeah.
that is, like, if you pull that as a basic weakness, you gotta, I mean, chances are you're doing bigger hand stuff because you're a Seeker anyway, but you gotta be a little bit more cognizant about drawing last action.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is if you aren't purposely playing big hand or getting near it, like that can freeze you in your tracks.
That is 5/8 of a full hand.
Yeah. And then you have to build up your hand just to discard it.
Yeah.
Back down again.
And what if in your hand are all your card draw cards? But again, like, I mean, you take a horror, you play those card draws to get, like, to 12 cards in one turn, and then you do it. Like, whatever. There's ways to deal with it. But I do, like, Amnesia is just a back-breaking card.
That's a 9 for me.
I mean,
Yeah.
And this, I feel like 8? 8.5? Like, it's so close to Amnesia.
It's
to
close,
me.
yeah.
It's in a class that can recover, and you can delay it slightly. You can choose when to forget all your stuff. Because Amnesia is just like kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Yeah, get wrecked.
Just get wrecked.
So,
I'm sitting at like a 7. But, like,
yeah.
I think depending on the game, depending on the time, it swings wildly. Like, sometimes it'll be nothing. Sometimes it will be
But hey, near the end of the game, there's only 3 turns left.
Yeah,
if you can just tank 3 horror.
There are times where that will be viable.
Yeah.
All right. Time to pay my due. Pay your due is basic weakness. Cost of 10 event. Pack trait, rogue investigator only. As an additional cost to play Pay Your Due, you may spend any number of additional actions. Reduced its cost by 5 for each additional action spent. Forced, if Pay Your Due is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and take 1 damage. So you can spend an action in 10. You could do a double action in 5 or a triple action for free.
I feel like that's a little bit on the lighter side, right?
I think it depends.
It depends on the deck, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here about rogues and money. Because I feel...
Oh, boy. I thought we said we weren't getting political.
No. Well, wait till I talk about Skid's weakness. No, okay. Paying for healthcare. So, rogues and money. There's been this thing since the beginning of the game that, like, oh, yeah, rogues, they get all this money. It's cool and stuff like that. And it's kind of similar with Seekers and cards. But I'm like, rogues don't inherently, a lot of them, make more money. You need to use a bunch of cards to do that. And those cards take away from your deck slightly, right? Because they're not actively doing anything, they're just making more money. Rogues do have a way to leverage that money more than most, and you can get really big benefits out of it. But this idea that, like, oh, it's a 10 cost card, wow, if anyone can do it, it's rogues. It's like, well, it takes a lot for rogues to get to that. It's not like
not everyone's Preston.
Yeah, or Jenny, right? Like, maybe, like, with that, but that's her ability? I don't know.
Yeah.
Side tangent.
I'm with you there. Like, even when you've got the ability to churn out a lot of money, chances are in your deck you've planned to use it.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's squirreled away in the bank and you've got it to spend.
Yeah.
So what makes it a little bit easier for me is that I would say Rogue has extra action stuff more so than they have money stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So depending on, I mean, I guess not everything works though. So like your Leo stuff, your Ace in the Hole stuff, that's all fine. But like, what's the 2 costs where you just get pay for an action?
Payday? No.
Not daring maneuver.
Is it quick thinking?
No, that's the
skill.
skill.
Oh, yeah, that is the skill.
Oh, it's here somewhere.
Swift reflexes,
That's-
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Swift reflexes.
Oh, sorry. An action to get. Okay, sorry.
It skids
Pay
in a box.
Pay to get an action. I thought you were like 2 cost and you get money. I was like, what card is that? I was so confused. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not like everything could potentially be applied to it, but I feel like more often than not, you're going to be relying on your ability to just cough up extra actions more than extra money.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I feel like this is much easier than the Seeker one. Yeah, because I mean, like if you lose all your resources, your cards still have icons on them.
Yes, they do.
You lose all your cards, your resources sit there and do
Your resources
butt
are
kiss.
also kaput.
Yeah. And the fact that you can spend actions to reduce that cost, like if you're really in a tough place.
Yeah.
Spend the actions on that and then round it out with the payday.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when you compare it to a lot of the like basic weaknesses where it's like double action to get rid of it. This is not. It's double action and 5 resources. It's like a triple action to get rid of it. So it's slightly worse than those ones that are just like double tap and get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But those ones come into play immediately. This one,
True.
when you
can
draw
sit
it,
on it. Yeah.
you can sit on it for maybe a turn if you need to. Also, if you draw it at the end of your turn or during the refresh phase, you have your entire turn to deal with it next round.
And that really comes down to Investigator and Rogue, because if you're like Safina, you're not going to want to take a bunch of damage on the chin.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like Tony, whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine.
And Tony's probably got money to,
Yeah.
because he makes money.
Yeah.
Because he's Rogue, obviously. So he inherently makes money. I will say, though, Payday doesn't work because the additional cost is to pay additional actions. You didn't take those actions. So if you do the triple action and then play Payday, but you need an extra action for that, whatever. Anyways,
What an unfortunate technicality.
you basically did one action,
Yeah,
before Payday.
that's fair.
So,
Yeah, because it's a play action, I guess, right?
yeah.
All right.
I think it's fine though. Like, I mean, if you really have to, it basically says skip a turn.
Like 4 or 5, probably.
Yeah.
It's worse. Like
Four-ish.
I'd rather have this than Paranoia when it could hit
Oof.
like clear everything out at the wrong time.
Yeah.
You can at least control this a little bit.
And if you are playing a big money rogue, like Paranoia, I mean, if you draw Paranoia, like that's one of the ones like,
Yes,
if a
yeah.
weakness
Nope.
destroys my deck, I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, Arkham, you've won, or reset it.
Yeah, new
Here we go.
campaign. Here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
So we need to make a scale where the 10 on the scale is the picture of Ian drawing the Iron Man weakness. that's a 10.
That motherfucker played with that weakness, though.
I did.
Mystic.
All right. To me, we have the Ectoplasmic Horror, which is also an enemy. It's got 2 fight, 2 health, 2 agility. Well, I just can't do. It's got 2 combat. No, it's fight value on enemies. All right, we're just gonna go there.
Yeah.
2 evade value as well. Monster and Geist traded. Mystic Investigator only. Hunter. The first time you reveal a Chaos token while attacking or attempting to evade Ectoplasmic Horror. Why is it not attempting to attack as well? Why do we only attempt to evade? Attacking or evading. Oh, it just seemed like a weird... Anyway. First time you reveal a Chaos token while attacking or evading the Ectoplasmic Horror, reveal an additional token for each empty arcane slot you have. And it deals 1 horror. Now this one, to me, seems like the lightest of the group.
Yes.
Because this is going to hop out on the person who most likely has their arcane slots filled.
Yeah.
And it's a 2/2/2. So it's not nothing. If it hits you early, it's going to be a little bit tougher because those extra tokens. But, you know, at the end of the day, you can power through an extra token pull more easily than some of these other effects that we've been talking about. So,
Like if you're like a 5-wheel Mystic and you have your Shriveling out and, I don't know, 6th Sense or something. So your arcane slots are full. That thing pops out. You look sideways. You're like, oh, cool. 2 combat. Boop. Good. Like...
Yeah, is this basically designed just to be a huge pain for the new stuff where it can give you more of the slots?
I think
And
it's
then, like, hey, I
Possibly,
ran
yeah.
the slots up. I haven't used them yet. And in that very specific circumstance, oh, this really sucks. But outside of that, it's meh.
It's anti-Amina Tech, which, you know, the encounter deck really needed. She was running up the board.
Yeah.
Now.
But the funny thing is, like, that penalty is only for actually, like, attacking. So if you have... What is the card that lets you deal damage for empty arcane slots?
Oh yeah,
It's
Eldritch Explosion, Arcane Explosion.
Something like that,
Yeah, and that's just straight up damage,
Yeah.
right? So you
That's
could
deal damage.
just be like, pfft,
Yeah.
if you have that.
And also, your Guardian friend can come around.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, no, because then it would be...
Well, he'd reveal additional tokens.
Yeah.
Presumably.
It's only a 2 fight, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
its
really.
stats are low, so
So if we always say like, oh, 2 up is a nice place to be, it'd be 4 up.
Mm-hmm.
So go 5 up. That's a 7, which for a guardian who's your dedicated killer, like attacking at the end value, a 7 is not a difficult task.
Mark's like, just dump out the bag. It's
Yeah,
fine.
just handful in there, like a kid at a carnival. Like,
It's fine.
Hit me again, sir. You're at 20. Hit me.
Well, and Ian, to your point, like so many of the direct damage stuff kind of caps out at 2. It's kind of hard to pull together a direct damage hit that's higher than 2. So this is like right in that range too.
Except for that the empty arcane slots one, the Eldritch Explosion.
Right.
Because it can. I think it caps out 5.
Max 5.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
But it also requires you to play a bunch of other cards to get your arcane slots. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but I mean,
You can do it.
It happens.
But yeah, a lot of the direct damage pings are like 1s and 2s, and then you'll get the fringe ones that go higher than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I feel like it's fine. I'm not like any enemy weakness is always going to be a pain because it's draining your resources that you would be spending on encounter deck enemies.
Actual enemies. Yeah.
Yes. So it's not nothing. I'm at like a 3 to 4 on this one.
I'd say 3.
Yeah.
Especially for the way your other players can help you.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're specifically doing the weird mystic who's not using their arcane slots.
In which case, you're punishing yourself already.
True story.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I like those builds, but they are tricky.
I wonder if by the time this releases, there'll be a build for that. Like someone will have cracked the code and we'll know.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the weakest of these weaknesses.
Yeah, I think so too. So competing for the number 1 weakness in this box, Survivor, underprepared. Event, basic weakness, it's blunder traded. Survivor, investigator only. Play only if underprepared is the only card in your hand and you have exactly 1 resource in your resource pool. While underprepared is in your hand, each card you commit to skill test is considered to have 1 fewer matching skill icons. So basically you committing single icons is
Negated.
impossible at this point, and you also have to get down to just this card in your hand, so you have to get rid of the card somehow. You need to amnesia yourself, and then you essentially need to paranoia yourself, which if you're playing Dark Horse, easy, but usually Dark Horse you have a mitt full of cards that cost 0 or their skills or whatever. Like, to get down to this and 1 resource, otherwise you're not committing cards.
I've played this in 1 campaign. It is terrible.
Yeah.
To line those pieces up, unless you are specifically playing Dark Horse, Patrice, like
Yeah.
it's brutal. So like the effect isn't like the worst thing in the world, but like losing icons on single cards, that's not nothing.
This one is Patrice. I'm actually like, oh, actually, that Patrice seems like it'd be
Okay, 1.
Yeah.
We got one investigator playing
investigator,
one specific archetype.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that.
So, do you think it's harder to, in general, broad strokes, do you think it's harder to get down to 1 resource or get down to 1 card?
Because to get it down to 1 card, it's saying if it has 1 of the icons on it, you just can't do it.
No, it just loses the icons.
Yeah, so
basically, what you have to do is you have to commit knowing that it's not going to help your skill test. You just need to get it out of your hand.
You
But
can
you
still
can
commit the
commit
card.
it.
Once they are committed,
Yeah.
they lose the icon.
Okay. So in theory, if you had all the cards that could all just go to 1 test be done,
Yep.
but then you've drained your hand.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, if it's at 7 cards, and then you also have to get your down to 1 resource.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
which it feels like it would be easier if it was like if you have no resources and no cards in hand, almost. You know, like having to hit exactly 1
Yes,
resource
exactly.
depending on what you have in hand to
And
like pay
then-
for it.
And then
An action.
an action to play it.
And then an action that very, very well will incur an attack of opportunity.
And you can only do it when it's your last action.
Oh, yeah, like lining the pieces up on this one is painful. Every time I have drawn this card, it has been, all right, well, I guess I just don't have icons on my singles anymore.
I just realized something.
What was that?
So playing a card does not itself change the game state.
Okay.
A card has to change the game state in order to play it. Like, you can't play a card that doesn't change anything. It going from your hand to the discard pile is not considered changing the game
What,
state.
really?
Yeah.
It's not in your hand anymore.
There was the what's his name? The rogue you don't like with all the money. Preston. His weakness is remove it from the game, right? This just plays and then goes to my discard pile.
Ugh.
I think, unless they change the rule, this and I think maybe the Seeker one. Technically, you can't play them. They must have changed the rule. Reduce. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like they're formatted the same. They must have changed it.
Yeah, I was curious about that because you've done now it's gone and
Yeah. So, because I know the Preston one, the text on it says "remove from game," which was what?
Yeah.
Remove this card from the game, which is changing the game state.
Right. Interesting. Huh.
But regardless of that, that's a rule
Yeah.
thing. I think that's. I'll check on our rules thing. You know what? If I get an answer before this comes out, I'll edit it in the answer because I have months.
I also feel like for Survivor, this is just going off my my memory, but I feel like a lot of the key skills that I like playing in Survivor are one icon. Like your unrelenting, resourceful.
Yeah.
Those are the two big ones that pop to mind. But
At least we can still play Take Heart safely.
Whew. Oh goodness! But Take Heart's going to gain you resources and
No!
yes, but you can
they've
play
thought
it.
of everything.
Why did you take Heart from me too?
Take heart, take from me.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so this is definitely the worst to me. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that Seeker one's really close. But I feel like the Seeker one, you can still control it a bit more. This is...
I think that's way. I think the Survivor's way worse.
It's tough to compare because the Seeker one has a worse effect, like just losing half your hand, more than half your hand, because you've also got the weakness in there too. However,
Yeah.
the losing your ability to basically commit single icons for an effect, that's tough. You got to sit with this thing in your hand for far longer than that one most of the time.
Yeah.
by my estimation, it's
Yeah.
a solid 9 for me.
Yeah, at least this one won't inherently kill you.
Right.
Like the Seeker one could. If you can't get it out of your hand, eventually you're going to take so much sanity you get knocked out. But
And to your point with like resourceful and whatnot, you could still commit them and get the effect.
Get the
Yeah.
bonus, yeah.
But you gotta find a way to pass the test. You gotta find your skill from some other
yeah,
venue.
This is not killing you immediately. It's killing you slowly because it's totally changing the structure of each of your turns.
It's causing
trying
real
to play
life
around
mental
it.
trauma.
Yeah.
the Seeker one kills you one turn at a time.
Yeah.
This kills you one test at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's brutal. I like the art though.
I think this one is like, I don't want to say it's a 10 because I don't quite think it's 10 to me is like paranoia in a resource rogue or
Right.
amnesia in big hand
The
hardening.
immediate pitch back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is like a 9.5 to pretty much
Yeah.
anyone that takes it. Whereas amnesia, paranoia, it's like sometimes you're like dark horse. I got paranoia. I usually throw that back.
Yeah,
I just think it's not
you
fair.
have to balance the
Yeah,
universe
yeah.
that way.
But this to me is like good 9.6.
Yeah. I'll play with it. I'll just hate myself for it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And if you guys remember, we got to preview this one when preview season was happening, and I think at the time it hadn't quite landed how hard it is to line it up to get that out of your damn hand. I think it just goes to your discard pile anyway. So even in that like dream situation where I'm playing Dark Horse Patrice, I'm gonna see it again,
Yeah.
and it won't take long.
You got rid of all your cards. It went in your discard pile. You're like, oh, finally, shuffle up your deck to draw more cards.
Yeah.
and
It's
there
back.
it is. Yeah.
Like if I drop Patrice's Elder Sign and I get to shuffle all but one card back in my encounter deck, I'm putting the Watcher back in
Yes.
and leaving that shit out.
That's an indication right
Yeah,
there.
like that should tell you everything.
Yeah. I'll take 3 Watchers over one of this.
No shit.
Yeah.
It's real bad. All right, well,
Right.
it bears kind of talking about the approach, though, because they kind of have, I don't know, I can't imagine it's got to be hard to develop basic weaknesses at this point because we have so many, and they kind of have to fit in a certain box, but I like, we got like the multiplayer ones in, was that in Edge?
I think, was
Was
that
it the one
campaign
before?
only?
Oh, maybe Edge was the campaign only ones, but yeah, the class specific ones are interesting. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing another swing at this.
I'm curious if we'll see more,
Yeah.
just because it's neat. But to like for the Seeker one,
Yeah.
let's use that as an example. Some of them, who cares? Like it's fine, it's there, it's whatever. I always have cards. Others, it might hit harder because of the different archetypes within it.
Yeah.
So if they do this again in a future box, then you could have it for the different sub archetypes. And yeah, I think that would be neat.
I do like the design space it has because they can kind of tailor the difficulty and the issue to that class.
Yeah, exactly.
Like one that just popped to my head, like that Seeker could have is, you know, like when you draw this, it goes into play or whatever. Your intellect is now equal to your lowest skill. Right? Like something like that, right? Where it's like it targets intellect. With Guardian, it would target whatever, combat, right? And like, so it's things like that where it can be like that class uses this stat more often than not.
Let's fuck with them.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining that's a picture of like someone in a high school gymnasium, and until you can do a pull-up, you can't leave.
Yeah. I want to go read my books. No. Yeah.
It's the rope climb in the gym.
Yeah.
Sweat it out, indoor kid.
All right, you heard it here first. The next Seeker one is called Gym Class.
And the Guardian one is like repeating 6th grade. You can't go out and play until you finish your homework.
Held back.
Yeah. Oh,
That's a great weakness.
oh yeah. Oh, like scholarship denied. You got a D, so you lose your sports scholarship. Combat.
Aw.
Yeah. Anyways.
Rogue is juvenile detention.
Yep.
Or juvenile, yeah.
I feel like we took a very school bent on this for
Yeah,
like
wow,
for like
yeah.
Arkham Jr.
Arkham Jr. My first investigator.
The Mystics are the mall goths, right?
That's rough.
Okay.
Just hot smoking.
Yeah. What are the survivors? Just every other kid that's not in a clique?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The people that everyone ignores.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Or survivors.
I really love the class-specific ideas. I wonder if they'll ever do solo only, or a certain like 2-player or less
I
weaknesses.
feel like if there's any time it's going to happen, it has to be in the like later age of the game where you could finally get away with that. Because I don't know if you guys. This would be an interesting question to open up to you. I still think that the game is a multiplayer game that can play solo.
Yeah.
And I think that more than like this is intended to be played solo in and of itself and in and of its design. I feel like it's a multiplayer game that you can do solo. So it'd be interesting to see a dedicated like push to be like, hey, if you are playing one investigator, here's your thing.
I think I agreed with that more before, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, as more cards come out, it gets like this game now. There's more and more and more viable and successful solo archetypes and investigators and stuff to the point where
I'm saying more from the perspective of like the design.
Yeah, and
like,
marketing too. Like
sure,
you gotta take that into hand. Like someone who always plays with their family, they're gonna get these weaknesses. Be like, I'll never play with these because solo is also a very specific play type. Because not everyone plays solo, and I don't blame them.
Right.
I agree with you though, Sean, because I think it is a game that in the design space it seems it is more for more people, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
But you can then make it work solo, and that's a different thing than it works for everything. Like what is the purpose, and then you make a secondary work versus hey, it's fine tuned at all levels, like full toolkits for everything.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't take a ton to like push true solo. It doesn't seem like that's what they want to do. They push multiplayer in a lot of different interactions in the design. It doesn't seem like, and not that I'm not saying that as a problem because I think multiplayer is a really fun way to go. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
I wonder if they'll ever imagine if they came out with a like a side scenario that is specifically designed. So just a single scenario, not an entire product or box or whatever, designed for solo play. And they include solo weaknesses in that to add to your collection.
Yeah,
I'd buy it.
Right? Like an 80 card pack that has maybe a couple investigator cards. Well, no, you have just the scenario and a couple weaknesses. So it is targeted. It's a smaller product, easier to pack and ship and stuff. So it's not a big box. And if you don't play solo, you just don't buy it because you only play it solo. And here's some solo.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I will buy it and then bitch about it.
Yeah.
Hey, get out of my head.
You forced me to buy this. You put the Arkham Horror the card game logo on this.
I want to play with these solo weaknesses with Carson.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's kind of one thing that says like Carson exists. Like that is a decided move to say like this is a multiplayer thing that we designed for multiplayer. Like I guess you can play Carson solo, but
Well, we're also at a point in the card pool. There's just so many cards that I think they can flirt with both.
That's the hope.
Mm-hmm.
To be clear, I want solo stuff to exist. It doesn't seem like it's part of the design now. All right, well, let's take a minute. We have the opportunity and the privilege to talk to lots of developers all the time, but from within, even, we get to talk about a little bit Fortune and Folly, the hottest of the new standalones. So, Ian, how long have you had it in your head that if I get to freelance, I'm gonna do a heist? Because I know it's not 0.
Yeah, I mean, I think not necessarily me developing it, but since Arkham Horror started, I was like, there needs to be a heist scenario at some point. That just needs to happen. And so when I got the opportunity to come up with a scenario, I had like 3 ideas, but it was basically a heist, and like the other 2 ideas were just to do my due diligence and try some other stuff out. But I always knew it was going to be heist as my choice to go with, because Arkham is made for it. Like it just works so well for that. But like I just love that whole concept.
Did it? I have to ask, when you were starting developing at the very beginning of it, were you planning on having a 2-part scenario, or were you like building the scenario and you're just adding things like, and then you're like, holy shit, this is gonna be maybe better as a 2-parter if you want, like. Is this long enough for an intermission? Was that or did you plan the intermission from the beginning?
Let's all go to the...
Yeah.
I always knew from the beginning that it was going to have like 2 segments. Now, whether that was going to be 2 separate scenarios, essentially, I didn't necessarily have that in mind. But I knew you had to have like the stakeout part, because like whenever there's a heist movie, there's always like the stakeout part. So I was like, okay. But there were like initially I was thinking that could be like the first agenda and act. And so that was kind of the initial way I tried it. And I think it might have been Maxine who was like, this is long. So maybe we could like think about splitting it. And and I thought that was a great idea, because it is long. And the other thing too is not just length, but because like the first part of the first, quote unquote scenario, and when you're doing it again, you're doing some of the same things. So to do that back to back, like in the same scenario, feels a little weird. So I think it just works better as 2 parts.
Well, it's got to be separate days, too, from a thematic perspective. So it feels good to kind of like wipe the slate, refresh. Obviously, you've got things set up depending on what you do.
If you're playing a 4-player game, it's sometimes 2 days practically.
I remember when we tried to play this at Arkham Knights.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
I enjoyed the first half.
Yeah, we got 3 hours for this. It'll be fine.
So we've talked about this a little bit and have some of the recording from the previous dev panel. But Ian, do you just want to like start giving a rundown of what Fortune and Folly is for anyone who hasn't listened to that?
Yeah, so Fortune and Folly standalone Arkham scenario, obviously centering around investigators in Monte Carlo having to pull off a heist of a new casino that's popped up there, and it's the first. And so far the only standalone that actually has like story integration with an existing campaign, the Scarlet Keys, which was a really cool element of it. When Maxine first told me about that, I was super stoked, because it's unique in that way, and having the opportunity to like weave it into the story of one of the big campaigns.
Did you get to come up with the key?
No, so the key was something they had kind of floating around. But it happened to work. I'm trying to remember now how much, if we adjusted the text or not. But it happened to work like perfectly with what I wanted the key to do, like the ability that they were thinking of. So I don't know how that destiny worked out, because I knew I wanted it like a key and needed to involve like probability somehow, because that's kind of the whole theme of this scenario is like the casino operator Abaran has this key that like manipulates probability, and so like it needed to have that kind of theme to it.
Doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this a little bit at the dev panel, but do you have some favorite heist movies that were inspiration or that you'd recommend to anyone? Just, we'll throw a little bit of technical time in here.
I mean, the obvious is like Ocean's 11 and those movies, both like the originals and the remakes. Those were like, I watched those a few times. Some of them are kind of unexpected, not so much movies, but some are like video games, like Metal Gear Solid was like a huge influence on this scenario of like, okay, you need to sneak around and watch out for guard patrols.
And
like
enemies have patterns.
Yeah, like the whole enemy pattern thing was straight up inspired by Metal Gear Solid when I was like trying to think of it. So another one was like Tenchu back in the day, like the ninja stealth one.
Is that on Dreamcast?
It was PS1.
PS1, okay.
The grifting episode of Community was always in the back of my head. This whole idea of watching like
This is a very
grift and heist
on-brand,
movies.
very on-brand cluster of things.
Those were some key elements for me.
All I can think of when we pull the scenario out now is, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yeah.
From Rick and Morty.
So what is it about the because a heist has a certain rhythm to it. What about that interests you in particular?
I guess ultimately a heist is a puzzle. At the end of the day, when you think about it, it's like you need to get to this objective, and there's all these obstacles, and you need to figure out like the optimum way to get there. And I guess that tends to interest me in games and stories. But then, like, it's not as cut and dry as a puzzle because heists usually involve an element of chaos.
At
and
least
randomness.
one thing goes wrong.
Yes, and that also speaks to me, that part of my soul. And so like that was also part of the conception early on that like it's not just going to be a heist. This is Arkham, obviously, so things are going to go wrong. Monsters are going to show up. And that also there needed to be like not just one set path, but this idea like there could be multiple paths to get to your objective ultimately.
How big was the map before someone told you it was too big?
No one told me. I had to have that conversation with myself. Because the biggest thing is a scenario, like an official scenario designer versus like when you're designing your own custom stuff. You could do like 200 cards if you wanted to, right? Like if you really wanted to.
So you're saying you thought about a 200 card scenario?
I mean,
that's what I'm hearing.
I mean, but when you're
right, guys, right? 200, right?
When you're actually designing an official one, like there's a set like card limit. You have this many cards, so every card you add. Like, if I want to do more locations, that's another cool thing that I have to cut out or not be able to do.
Yield zero-sum game.
Yes.
Is it 80 cards?
I can't remember. It's 70-something was what it ended up being.
But there's a hard number, right?
Yeah, there's a hard number, and so you have to kind of fit within that. But my original conception was to have a multi-level one, like a 3-story one. But ultimately, it didn't work out well because then you would have like very small levels, for each level, and it was better to just have one sprawling map, which lets you kind of do more interesting movement.
It's like that third scenario in Carcosa that I always forget the name of because it's just kind of
Echoes of the Past.
Yeah, that one. It's got 3 levels, but each floor is like three cards.
Yeah, it's just like which is kind of how it would have ended up being.
I've got 78 cards here.
That sounds right. Yeah. Sounds right.
I do enjoy how the casino floor felt like the casino floor, and the back of house felt like the back of house. Like that was awesome.
Nice.
The theme felt like it came through there.
Yeah. And speaking of theme, talk to us about the card suits.
Yeah. So I had a few different. I always knew, like, there were a few elements that I always knew right off the bat for this heist. There's going to be the patrols, the Metal Gear Solid patrols. there was going to be games for sure, because I'm a sucker for games within games. So I knew...
Have I got a game for you?
Yeah. Somehow we would have games within games. So I tried a few different methods. One was like just simple skill tests, and that felt like, some was like playing with the tokens and like having to draw certain tokens. That was cool. But I think ultimately in conversation with Maxine, and then I think it was actually Nate French at FFG who suggested this idea of like, he didn't really have an idea of how it would work, but just like for those who don't know, he's like a huge poker fan.
Go listen to episode 9 of Mythos.
Not just a fan too. He goes to the World Pro Tour poker. Like he competes. At
poker.
In Vegas and at big tournaments.
Huge into poker.
Yeah.
So I think his suggestion was roughly along the lines of like, can we get suits on the cards somehow? And then once I heard that, I ran with the idea, because that solved like so many of the like issues I wanted to solve, and it would look cool on the cards. And once they kind of like started telling me that would be possible, then I just started running with it from there. And then it was kind of easy to design the games from there, other than Baccarat, which I had to learn how the heck you play Baccarat.
Maybe one day you can teach me.
Yeah. All I do is I had to include it because if you see like James Bond movies, they're playing Baccarat, and like Monte Carlo, it's known like that's one of the most famous games there. So I was like, okay, I better learn how to play.
Does Baccarat use cards? I don't even know.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Like when you said in James Bond they're playing Baccarat, all I can think about is that scene where he's like using the long wooden paddle to just like delicately like place 2 cards in front of people at a time across the table, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Very, very strong visual for me. So one thing I always love about enemy design is, I do love punching a ghoul like the rest of us, but I also really like enemies where it's not just about you need to kill this or whatever else. So like Nick did a really good job with Excelsior and how the cops and guests interacted with there. Like how did you kind of come about, or I guess how did you land on what the casino staff interaction looked like?
Yeah, it was an interesting balance because I wanted it to be like you couldn't just like charge into the casino and just like chop everyone down with a sword. I mean, you can, but see, that's where the balance is.
It's
like
the Guardian method.
Yeah, there needs to
Going
be
loud.
there needs to be a consequence to it, which in this case ended up being raising the alarm level. So I wanted it to be like you could do it. It'll just make it very hard for you, and it'll be a different type of approach. But ultimately, like a heist should be open to like you just evade everyone and you don't kill anyone and you do the sneaky method. So really, it just tied to that alarm level mechanic.
And I want to design a scenario for a rogue.
Yeah, I mean, who's
Money?
better at a heist than a rogue?
Evading?
Yes,
More money.
gambling. Yep.
Rogues come by it honestly, man. It's money, right? Like,
It's true.
Is the scenario? I don't actually know this. Is it completely playable like pacifist run? I don't think you need to kill anybody, do you?
Trying to
You
check
can
my own
grab
memory. I don't. Yeah, I think you can. I think you can get by without ever
Ooh,
killing
that's a
anyone.
challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, that is.
First, I just need to get a hold of beating it. Then,
Yeah. Straight pacifist run.
You've won once. I watched you win.
that's right. I have won once.
Yeah.
I mean, I got defeated, but our team won.
Yeah. Your team won.
We got Daisy out.
We got Daisy out, and that's all that matters.
Daisy, the
That-
heist extraordinaire.
Boy, that scenario flipped on us fast. That got out of control.
I think that's another part of the kind of enemy interaction too, is the roles. Like that was another piece where I was like, okay. Thankfully, the heist trope is so kind of established in society by this point that like that's why I'm saying a lot of these things I knew off the bat I was gonna do, and one was roles because you have to have like the face and the muscle,
Right.
like if you like at Ocean's 11. So then coming up with what those roles would be, so then that's when it's like, okay, the muscle can get away with like killing people on the sly because that's what they're good at,
Roughing them up.
or knocking them out.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad that we missed out on the explosives expert. The explosive expert, if I'm being honest. Sorry, I didn't mean to kill that.
Yeah.
So we've also got Isamara.
Mm-hmm.
She's a fun NPC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the big thing there was trying to think of like who would be the quest giver essentially. Like
Sure.
why is their heist?
She's also kind of the inside person too.
And the inside person, playing on the trope like the lounge singer type for sure. But then trying to make it so it's not like she's like a passive kind of element in the story, which is how a heist story would go in the 1950s, maybe, you know. But I wanted it to be like she's the one who's really driving this forward, you know, and potentially providing some help along the way.
So then it kind of remains to I guess to be discussed. I don't know what other word I was looking for. With Arkham, there's always the element of the supernatural, and I'm sure from a design perspective, decisions to be made as to like when it comes in, how heavily it comes in, like what corner of the mythos are we gonna grab from? Like what did that conceptualization process look like?
Yeah, so there's the heist element, and then I knew at some point there'd be the turn, which was also helpful because that's like a poker term, the turn. So thinking of it in that way, that there'd be the sudden change to the Arkham piece of it, the monsters. I went through, that part was a little more kind of noodling with different potential monsters that could come in. And ultimately it wasn't like a big like tactical decision. It was just like, well, I really like Shamblers and Lovecraft, and that piece of it. And I knew it hadn't been used much. It was used in Nick's scenario, funnily enough, the Excelsior Hotel, but because it was like one possible, and it wasn't like necessarily like the key thing of the scenario.
Also, his just looked like swole E.T.
Yeah.
You got the full.
Yeah. And the piece that really sealed it for me was I was reading some more lore about the Shamblers, and part of their lore was that sometimes they're summoned by really improbable events happening. Like if certain like improbable events are repeated like multiple times in a row, that can summon them. And I was like, okay, that's perfect for this probability-based heist scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led me to bring those in. But yeah, it was a lot of balancing of like when do you bring them in so that it's not too hard too early, and it's all that kind of difficulty scaling stuff.
What about the main villain? What went into that?
So that's kind of like the Scarlet Keys integration piece. So Maxine this was before Scarlet Keys was out. She's like, well, you're going to have to know some of these pieces and be spoiled on what Scarlet Keys is going to be about because we're going to integrate it into it.
And I'm sure you were like, oh,
damn,
Yeah.
please no.
Don't throw me in the briar patch.
No. But so because of that integration, like the casino owner, the big bad would have to be a coterie member. But then they're also different, as everyone has played in Scarlet Keys now. They each coterie member has a different personality and objective. So my idea was he would be more on the villain side. He's trying to do like bad things with this key and like keep the power for himself. He's greedy. But in terms of like the personality, me and Maxine kind of worked together on him. And came up with this idea, like he has a really, really bad temper. He's kind of over the top. Like in my head, I picture him as like if you've seen the Daredevil Netflix series Kingpin, like that kind of like he's very competent business person and like knows how to be in control until he's not. And he's out of control. It goes way too far. Like that's kind of how I sure Abaddon being.
No, this is a deep pull, but I always, well, of course, now that I've gone deeper into the Scarlet Keys and know him a little bit better, like he's got big Stromboli energy from like Pinocchio.
Yeah, that is a pull, but yeah, yes, yeah, and the other piece of that, like thinking about like this casino in Monte Carlo, which it can be a very kind of cosmopolitan place with a lot of people coming in. I just thought it would be cool to have someone from the Basque region of Spain, which is why he's Abaddon and has this name that sometimes people have trouble with because Basque surnames are known for being very long and unique. But yeah, I thought it would be interesting to kind of pull some different ethnicities together. Isamara is from Nicaragua, which is where my family was from, so I'm like, I'm just going to put some representation in there.
There you go.
We never have game characters from Nicaragua, so now we do.
Love that.
If you were to... Have you played this solo? I assume you've played it solo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's been your most successful solo run?
Ooh.
And who would you recommend, do you think?
Don't get it wrong.
Asking for a friend.
I'm trying to remember.
Because I feel like Rita might?
I think I did it with Finn pretty well, which is
Yeah.
not surprising. And I think it was Finn and Rita were probably my most successful solo runs. Like very evadey people. We could also pull some clues in, and in solo you don't need quite as many clues, though you still need a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of single digits.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, single clue locations. And
Yep. And like any big map scenario, anyone who can get around quickly is gonna
Scoot.
yeah.
On the multiplayer side, who is your like unofficial canon team and what are their roles?
Oof. That's a tough one.
Finn, Skids.
Yep.
Come on, this is easy.
I mean, it probably would be a lot of rogues. Like, I think of it in terms of the roles. Like, you probably have, like, Tony as muscle. Like, he just screams muscle to me. Like, he
Oh, and like the
probably
Rottweiler.
punches... Yeah.
I just watched that recently.
Even though I'm not on record as, like, a big Preston fan, like, he feels like a face type, you know? The one who would, like, get you in the door and pretend to be a high roller.
Or Jenny. Jenny might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jenny or Preston. Like, I probably am going all rogue here, like the thief.
Oh, I mean,
would probably be someone like Kaimani, I imagine.
Oh,
would be like
yeah.
maybe a Trish, someone like that. And then the grifter. I'm just laughing because it's
Skids?
called probably someone like Skids
Or Finn.
or Finn. Yeah,
You
someone.
already used Finn, so.
Oh.
Did I use Finn?
Oh no, he was your solo.
Yeah. Someone on the underworld side of things.
What are some Easter eggs in here that nobody else knows about yet?
Mm.
Give us an exclusive, baby.
Given the exclusive. There is one location flavor text that is heavily inspired by a Star Trek episode, surprising no one. Because in Star Trek Next Generation, they often played poker.
Is it that one?
It is, yes.
I think it's nice that we're not saying it so people can,
I know.
Yeah.
You're still causing people to go look.
There's only so many locations, so you can look through the locations, look at
Yeah.
the flavor text, and figure it out.
Yeah. But what you said is a good hint.
Yeah. The name of the casino itself is in French, but it is a reference to a band that both Maxine and myself are fond of, Mars Volta. So I think people can use those pieces, connect those, and figure out what the connection is there.
I like the Mars Volta, and I know French, and I have not figured out what that's
Time to do some work.
Now we need to go look at the name of the casino.
Yep. Let's see. There's a few others in there. I had a card at one point which was just called Grifting 101 from the Community episode. I think those are the main ones. There might be a couple of others that I'm not remembering right now, but yeah, those are the big ones for sure. Like, gotta fit Community reference in there, Star Trek, some music, all the big hits.
No Star Wars, though?
No.
Oh, you're dead to me.
Could have had them play Sabak or something.
Mars Volta Sabak. How hard a sell was it to get the scenario reward in there where you take the poker deck with you a little bit?
Oh, not hard at all.
I don't remember what the name of it was.
Yeah, the deck of possibilities. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not very hard at all. I mean, a lot of it was not a very hard sell. Thankfully, like I'm very grateful to have worked with Maxine because she gave me a lot of freedom to come up with weird things. As we all know by now, she is also a fan of the weird, so she didn't push back too hard on
Weird
some
Maxine
of these.
is best Maxine,
Yeah,
right?
other than just like here are the limits and try to figure out how to make it work. But she was very supportive in that regard and like giving me space, like. Not micromanaging at all. It's just like here's kind of the scenario and like just explore and figure it out. So that deck I try to like a lot of things I tried a few different ways of making it work. The original list of things you could do was a lot more extensive and weird, but ultimately I had to scale it down a bit. But I'm pretty happy with where it ended up. And
What was the limiting factor there? Did you have to get it down to a card?
yeah, like I was originally trying to carve out space in the actual rule book, which like if you put it in a rule book, like because you know like in the blob that everything has like the reality acid, like so kind of similar. I was like, okay, I could use up pages. The thing is, I actually hit the page limit on my rules. I think I have like the longest rule book for a standalone or something like that.
Yeah, you did it!
Yeah, so I was like, okay, achievement unlocked. So I was like.
Can't wait to see what the 200 page, the 200 card scenario rulebook looks like.
So I was like, okay, how else can I make this work? I could just put it on the card, on the back. So, yeah, so being able to just like figure out how to make that all fit and have some fun abilities. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that it was influenced. Here's another of my influence coming in. RPGs, specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, there's the deck of many things.
Yep. All right.
So I was like, how can I bring the deck of many things into Arkham and switch it up a bit? So yeah, that's really the idea of like that people can draw random cards and weird stuff happens that they can't control. So yeah.
I have never gotten the deck of possibilities, and I was like, wait, I need to read this. And I kind of read the first part, like, okay, I get how that works. I flipped it over, and I'm like, wow, some of these are insane. I'm like, how does this work? And then I had to RTFC and realize it's once per game.
campaign.
Yes.
Well, once per campaign, and then this ability once per game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there is a really bad one down there,
Yeah.
too, so.
Yeah. I knew I wanted one in there that was pretty bad too. Yeah.
Hand of the Strangler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know it is a long time out, and I'm asking you to speak in no definite terms. But if you're ever given the opportunity to develop for Arkham again, do you have another competing concept that you were thinking about?
I would say I have several competing concepts. Like the heist was on front of mind, so that was like the big one. But there are others I would potentially explore. I probably don't want to spoil it just in case that opportunity does ever come up again.
I just want to see him do a sequel. So like
exactly.
Ocean's 11, Ocean's
12.
12, Fortune and Folly, Fortunes and Follies.
2 Fortune, 2 Follies. Oh, then Fortune, Folly, Tokyo Grift.
Oh, there's the episode title.
I mean, my original conception, this never even made like the original version of the scenario, but in my conception, I was like, okay, then there's the part where you have to do like the escape and like, do you go off through the roof or da-da-da? So maybe that would be the sequel of like.
Now I want to make a scenario that's in a skyscraper, and you have to like
build it in a tower.
Yeah, and then you have to somehow get from the top to the bottom.
Parkour and Folly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots
We're
of
just designing your next
I
scenario for you.
know.
I'm not an Arkham player. I'm a goddamn parkour instructor.
Oh my God, dying. Well, excellent. Well, I am very excited, and I know this is going to be releasing a long time from now. So, like in reality, when anyone hears this, it's probably have already happened. But I'm very excited to like really dive back into Scarlet Keys, and I'm gonna make a trip to Monte Carlo pretty often, I think, because I don't know. I really like how this one turned out.
I thought it was really neat when this had been announced but not released yet. And then there's the review article or the preview article, and then also the Scarlet Keys campaign was kind of teased, and they showed the world map, and people linked up like, hey, that's in Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo's on the map, and everyone's like, could it be? Could that be a scenario that links in? And other people are like, no, they've never done that before. That won't happen. And it's like, I just thought that was a really cool moment where like people realized that it would connect before it was officially said. That was I thought that was really cool.
Pretty special that even 8 years into the game, is that how far we are? 7 years, 7 and change, that we can still get surprises like that where the format gets mixed up. It's pretty special.
Nice job, Ian.
Yeah,
I think we've talked about the scenario, but now we get to say nice things to you. Like, very well done. It's super fun to play. You did a great job.
The theme, like, absolutely, like, I am not one. I've talked about this a lot. Like, I'm not super huge on theme. Like, if theme hits, I'm like, cool. If it doesn't hit, I'm like, cool. I'm just playing the game for the mechanics, right? Like, I enjoy the mechanical part of it. But this one, like, the mechanics were so well placed in the theme. Like, it just, I had the stash and I'm hiding stuff. The employees were actually walking around the floor like they should. Playing the games felt like the house is going to win because it's pretty shitty to gamble at a casino. You're probably going to lose, right? Like, it just, but sometimes you want to. It just, there were so many things that, oh man, you got me, man.
Well, you know, I'm kind of the opposite end of it, Scott, where I love theme and then like the type mechanics are great. But it got me just as well because there's so many of the different games. I almost felt like you'd go around and like, okay, can we get this one? Can we push our luck? Should we go here?
Yeah.
And almost like drawn into the casino floor. And that's, wait, we have this thing we need to do. And then you do it and it's the type mechanics around it. So just all angles, very well rounded.
Well, even the rolls, right? It's like, well, what would the muscle do? Well, the muscle could do this. I'm like, oh, of course he can, right? Like, it just, there's the theme, and it's like, that's the mechanical. Yeah, it really sung.
Yeah. It's a lot of really great notes, like the variable abilities that you get, like Scott mentioned, the cool enemies, the integration to the campaign, just like so many cool things in one tiny little pack. Well, not tiny. It's this huge. This is a fat deck. one thick little package.
Yeah. Well,
what's the best thing you ever stowed?
Ooh.
I mean,
you know mine is Cyclopean Hammer with like 2 other cards that were like, I was just like, start turn 1, I'm like, bleh.
I always like stowing allies just because it's like the Ocean's 11 thing where they hide them in the box so you can get into the vault.
Yep.
Which I specifically like made it that broad so you can hide allies in there for that reason. I think I'm always a fan of that. Well, yeah, I appreciate the kind words. I'm still don't really believe that I got to design a scenario. Like when the game first came out and being someone who's interested in design, that was like a thing in my head. Like if somehow magically I could design a scenario at some point for this game, that would be a bucket list item. And yeah, got to check that off the whole bucket list. And super happy with how it came out.
Some people wait a lifetime.
And I mean, technically, you and Nick are still tied for who's designed the most Arkham scenarios.
It's true.
Right? Like,
it's true. He's gonna get you up sometimes.
Hold on to it for a little bit more. I guess that wraps up this segment.
And this episode, I
And
think.
this episode. Yeah. So good to be in the same room with y'all to discuss this. Someday we'll have to all live in the same city so we can do this all the time.
Deal.
I don't know how that's going to happen. Either that or just invent teleporters at some point.
We should take an average of all our positions in North, like, on a map and just pick the town closest in the middle.
I feel like we're
I
going
don't
to
think
take somewhere
we're
weird.
not going to like the result.
I know.
We'll end up in like the northwest corner of Utah or something.
Like in the middle
It'll
of a
be fine.
national
It'll be
park
fine.
or something.
It's the most fair way, okay?
Yes. That's the only way to decide.
I control the probability as I hold the Fortune and Folly deck. You guys move here.
Okay.
There it is.
Bet.
Fortune's favorite over here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we can hang out with Nick.
That's true.
And Maxine. And Duke.
It's true.
And everyone else.
It's all here. You're making the best argument, really.
We would have to travel less far for BusterCon.
Deal. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for joining us for 157, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.